I think gold can go to 20,000 by late this decade, early next. So, that's a huge thing for the Russias and the Chinas and the USs who have gold. If you have no gold, like if Canada truly has no gold, it was a foolish thing not to have at least had some reserve there, particularly given what's going to happen to these countries or to the governments is ending right now. I think we begin the next leg up. I have a target of 75 for silver this year. Could spill into the first quarter. Doesn't have to be there this year, but before the bust anyway. And gold, I think, can get to 3,000. I think my 3,000 target, it may be conservative.
Gold has a long and storied history as a reliable store of wealth during times of economic strife, and according to an analysis of the yellow metal's largest price runs over the past 50 years. Even as equities stumble, macroeconomic fears mount, and gold outperforms all commodities and most other assets with 16% gains in 2024. David Hunter predicts that gold could climb to $3,000 this year, turning it into one of the few appreciating assets on government balance sheets. He also suggests that by late this decade or early next, gold could surge to $20,000, a scenario that would have major implications for countries like Russia, China, and the US, which hold significant gold reserves. As per the World Gold Council's recent Central Banks Gold Reserves survey, nearly 30% of the world's central banks plan to add gold to their own reserves this year. WGC collected data from a record 70 central banks from emerging markets and advanced economies across the world. The People's Bank of China was the world's largest single buyer of gold in 2023, with its net purchases of 7.23 million ounces, the most by China for at least 46 years, according to the World Gold Council. China's gold holdings stood at 72.8 million fine troy ounces at the end of July, unchanged from the end of May and June. The value of China's gold reserves grew to $176.64 billion at the end of July, from $169.7 billion at the end of June. India is the second biggest player in the gold market. India's gold demand will top out above 750 tons in 2024, not far behind 2023's 761 tons. The Bank of Canada began selling its gold holdings in the early 2000s. Canada is the G7 country. David warns Canada that it might face severe consequences if it does not hold any gold. He foresees that by the early 2030s, we could witness governments going bankrupt and collapsing under the weight of their debts. This, he believes, is the inevitable consequence of decades of cyclical debt accumulation, a Ponzi scheme that has finally reached its breaking point. Before we explore further, be sure to subscribe and click the bell to stay tuned for more engaging content.
A huge factor, but certainly if you've got gold on your books, I'm predicting $3,000 gold this year. So, it's an appreciating asset on the books, and there aren't too many of those on any of these government books. So it does help to a certain extent, but it's minor, I think. The bigger problem will be down the road. I think gold can go to 20,000 by late this decade, early next. So, that's a huge thing for the Russias and the Chinas and the USs who have gold. If you have no gold, like if Canada truly has no gold, it was a foolish thing not to have at least had some reserve there, particularly given what's going to happen to these countries or to the governments. If my forecast comes true, the bust is going to cause massive fiscal and monetary response to the tune of, I just look at the US, but the tune of maybe 20 trillion coming out of the Fed in new money, in QE, et cetera. And proportionally all around the world, that kind of infusion of money, that will jumpstart an inflation cycle with a lag. It'll take a year or two, but by the late 20s, you could be looking at, in the US, 25% inflation by 2029 or 2030. If we're looking at 25% inflation here, you can have similar in Canada. And, think of having to finance the deficits that these countries have, the debt that they have. We won't be able to service the debt at those rates. And U.S. debt will probably double during the bust. In response to the bust. So you'll have, if we have 20 trillion in new money coming in, it's going to be matched by maybe not a double, but certainly 20 trillion in fiscal expansion, fiscal debt. Um, you're not only going to have to finance what you have now, but a lot more than that at rates that are through the roof. There's no equation that can balance that. I don't have any answer for you in terms of how that ends, except very badly. I think we're going to see in the 2030s, not 2030, but sometime in the probably first half of the 2030s, we're going to see governments go belly up. We're going to see basically bankrupt governments and collapse. So it's the seeds are sown. I think this has been building for ever since the Great Depression for 80 years or more, cycle to cycle to cycle, and we're now at the end point in that whole thing where we have this Ponzi scheme of debt that's up through the roof, and we just kept financing it. Every cycle required more money, more debt to pull us out of the tailspin, and we're now at the point where there's only one cycle left, and then I think everything unwinds.
Silver's price extended its losses for the third straight day and stayed below $27 amid increasing geopolitical fears spurred by the Middle East conflict. Gold price gained some positive traction on Thursday and snaps a 4-day losing streak, albeit lacks follow-through and remains below the $2,400 mark. David Hunter believes that the consolidation of gold and silver is nearing its end. He stated, "Gold has been consolidating at a high level since April, and silver has been doing the same since mid-May. Hunter has set a target of $75 for silver this year, although it might extend into the first quarter of next year. He also believes that gold can reach $3,000, suggesting that his $3,000 target might even be conservative. Now, let's delve into the video.
I think gold and silver, gold's been consolidating at a high level since April, and silver's been consolidating since mid May. I think that consolidation ends now, so is ending right now. I think we begin the next leg up. I have a target of 75 for silver this year. Could spill into the first quarter. Doesn't have to be there this year, but before the bust anyway. And gold, I think, can get to 3,000. I think my 3,000 target, it may be conservative. Important to know, and I think the miners that have been so frustrating to investors will finally get the bid. If you move up that much in the metals, you're going to see the miners play along very well. And the world's a mess. I mean, there's no question. The world is a mess. We've had those alignments for a while. I mean, it's obviously when you get to the point where it looks like a misstep could lead to world war. Then those things come to the forefront. But I mean, Iran and Russia and China, Iran being aligned is not a surprise. They've been aligned for quite some time. Um, India's kind of a wild card. I don't really think they're aligning with that bloc. I think they're maybe playing their cards a little bit. We've obviously, and it didn't start with Biden's regime, but his regime's done, made a mess of everything. But this idea that we can, instead of fighting the wars, we can have proxies fighting the wars, and instead of, um, you know, shooting people, we're going to use sanctions. Thing's been an absolute failure and has led to some of this other stuff. Saudi Arabia, I think, is wild card in all of this as well. I do have some hope that if we get past the Biden administration and we get a Trump administration, that some of that can be repaired. It's not clear who's what. I mean, Russia is an aggressor. As some people believe. The Biden administration, you know, trying to fuel this thing and cover up some other things, etc. I think Russia's been an aggressor, but I also think we've poked the bear. There's been a lot of mismanagement, I think, in this. So whether Trump can end it like he thinks he can, we'll see. But I do think there were places along the way where we could have maybe seen some peace agreements and avoided hundreds of thousands of soldiers being killed. But we do have a new world order agenda out there. I think in this country there are a lot of politicians that are helping fuel that. Certainly the left would love to see a one world government. There's clear agenda there, so they're trying to hurt us. Even though they're supposed to be our country and managing our country, they're doing things that I think are greasing the skids for that. So this all fits into that too, as I think. I've got my own theories about the whole thing going back to 9/11. I think we were baited into Al Qaeda. There's some reason to believe that Al Zawahiri was supposedly number two Al Qaeda guy was supposedly a KGB agent. If you go back in the archives, so they may have been doing the dirty work for Russia. Being able to be a surrogate without us thinking it's Russia. I think we were baited into going over into the Middle East. They knew we'd react, and then we spent decades drawing down our military and both hardware and soldiers and are a shadow of what we were in terms of the military got drawn down, and then we pull out of Afghanistan. Soon after Afghanistan, Ukraine happens. It's just another way to draw us down. I mean, we're pouring money into there like crazy and not pouring into our own military. So I believe it's basically the communists using a strategy to draw us down so that we become a paper tiger. I'm not a military expert, so I can't tell you whether there's a good answer contrary to that in terms of how strong we still are. But I do feel that that may be some of what went on, if not a lot of it. And I just think we need new leadership in this country for sure. It's the people that have been at the forefront here for a while do not have our interests at heart, in my opinion. So.
Central banks and official institutions increased global gold holdings by 183 tons, slowing down from the previous quarter, but still reflecting a 6% increase year on year. Moreover, a World Gold Council annual central bank survey confirmed that reserve managers believe gold allocations will continue to rise over the next 12 months. How could the central bank's gold reserves influence their country's economic stability during periods of high inflation and fiscal instability? Your opinion matters. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button if you enjoyed this, and subscribe to stay informed on our journey together.